Betty for the, Thank you to Betty for the invitation and Julian for communicating all the details and Nathaniel for being here and guiding this meeting today. I'm really super grateful to be here. And welcome to the 222 portal. Did you guys look at the date today? Lots of great energy today of harmony and balance and trust and alignment. So it's a beautiful day to be together. I'm going to share with you my journey with the angels. Um, Throughout my life, occasionally I would have this voice come into my head with some guidance. And sometimes it was a voice, sometimes it was just a nudge to go a certain direction. One night, I remember in my 20s, a full-on conversation I had with Spirit. And true to my nature, I argued with Spirit. I was like, "Are you sure?" We had a full-on conversation in my head. But all of my experiences were interpreted by religious beliefs that had been given to me. And so it was grief and loss that opened the door for me to look at things a little differently. First, in my 20s, my little brother died by suicide. And not long after that, I went through a pretty traumatic divorce. I had three young children, and I remarried with three kids. And then we had three more kids and formed our own Brady Bunch family, which, if you're old enough, you know what I'm talking about when I say Brady Bunch family. Life was really good, but my nervous system was a wreck. Like with all of the different experiences that I'd had in my first 30 years, I just was constantly on guard, constantly feeling this, yeah, just like heightened awareness, which honestly, if you've had that experience in some ways, that makes you perfect for spiritual experiences because you have heightened awareness. So it's a double-edged sword. But I had through these years of, having this family and I was homeschooling my kids. I was doing all kinds of different things. But on Mother's Day in 2007, like, and before that, I was in this place where I was like, I kept trying to tell myself, life is really good. Like, I can calm down now. I can just expect good things. Like, life is good. And then Mother's Day 2007 happened. And before this trip, I was on a trip with my three youngest children. I felt this unexplained heaviness leading up to the trip. And I didn't really understand it, but I was with my son, who was 12, my son James, my son David, who was 8, and my daughter Carrie, who was 10. And suddenly on this trip on the highway, in the middle of the afternoon, I fell asleep at the wheel, having never felt tired that day. And we were in a rollover accident. And my youngest son, David, again, who was 8, was thrown from the car, as was also my daughter Carrie, who was 10, and they both passed away in that accident. And it was absolutely devastating. I won't take the time to go there right now, but I'll just say that there were some really unusual things that happened even in the middle of the accident. In the middle of the accident, I heard a voice in my head, like as we're rolling, I heard a voice in my head that was calm, that was present, that said, pull your arm in. And after the accident, I met and learned of two different people who had lost their arm in a rollover accident. So I know it was my angels, it was my guides protecting my arm, even though my children passed away in that accident. And today I believe with all my heart that this was our soul plan. Like we planned this before we came. And I tell people all the time, if I had a choice to be their mom for 8 and 10 years, or not be their mom, I would choose all day long to have been their mom. Like I'm still their mom, but you know what I mean? In presence, in here on earth, I would choose all day long to have been their mom during those years. And about 5 months after the accident, and I will tell you, it was hell. It was hell. I mean, I don't. I don't know how else it's impossible to share. Even having had those grief experiences of losing my brother and going through the divorce and all the craziness that went along with my divorce with break-ins and it's just crazy stuff that happened. But at any rate, um, I was, Betty said one day to me, she's like, "You were very creative in your soul planning." And I'm like, I love that so much. That put a smile on my face. But um, about 5 months after the accident, I walked into a drugstore and I saw these costumes. It was just before Halloween, and I saw these costumes hanging on the rack, and my I immediately saw this costume and thought of my daughter Carrie, and I thought, oh, she would love this costume. And of course, immediately the pain came back, the grief came back. I mean, it was never far away. Then I realized there would be no costume for Carrie and David that year. And in that moment, in my head, I said, why did this have to happen? And I heard a voice respond with, they're right where they're supposed to be. And then in my head, I said, why did it have to happen like this? Because it is so painful to lose your kids, but also to lose your kids when you feel at fault and you're seeing all this devastation around you and your family and their friends and feeling the heaviness of that weight. And so in my head, I said, why did it have to happen this way? And that voice said to me, how would you have liked it to happen? Now, there's so much depth in those really short answers I received. And it took me literally months. There were so many other things. In fact, I wrote a whole book. I was going to pull my book and something else and show you, but I wrote a whole book about it, Miracles in the Darkness. Like there were so many things that happened that were unexplained that helped me in that journey. But it took me 3 years to really integrate that to a place where I felt a semblance of healed, a semblance of healing. Like it was night and day from where I had been before. And it's often, if you're in this space, you're probably familiar with A Course in Miracles. It really was just that. It's just like having that voice say to me, they're right where they're supposed to be. Like that's a healing of thought. It's a healing of thought. It's a healing of looking at things differently. So I was in therapy for 3 years, as you can imagine, after this accident, trying to heal the PTSD, the trauma, the pain of everything that had happened. And my therapist wanted me to do some journaling. I was not doing any journaling. I will tell you, if you're dealing with grief right now, journal, do it. I have since learned to be more proactive in the journaling and that releasing practice of putting those thoughts and those feelings on paper, hugely healing. But I found my journal from 2010 when my therapist has said, I want you to write some things down, and I have like 5 pages of little tiny notes that are just despair. And then there's a break because literally it was like 3 years after the accident when I felt this healing power come into my life. And then I started journaling again, and my journal was totally different. It was writing down questions. I started with topics. I was like, I want to understand love. And I would write love at the top of the page. And then I would write down the inspiration that would come. And a lot of times that was done with spiritual texts, like religious texts and that sort of thing. But from 2010 on, I continued to journal. And then over time, I learned to communicate with my brother and my kids on the other side. And at first, it was recognizing their presence. And then it became more interactive as I learned to write letters to them and then listen for answers and write down what I was hearing. Um, but when I wrote my book that came out in 2020, in 2020, not the book launch I was expecting because it was in the middle of shutdown. Um, I was very much in my religion was giving my experiences. Um, I was allowing that to interpret what I was experiencing. And over time, Spirit, the angels showed me that I could expand outside of what I had originally thought. And so when I wrote my book, you will see that I didn't even talk about angels in that book. That came out in 2020. That was just 6 years ago. I didn't even talk about angels in that book. And yet, not long after the book came out, I had a couple of huge experiences. One was I got into my car one day. I was out running errands and I got into my car, and a friend of mine who we no longer lived in the same area. We did, we weren't as connected as we had been in the past, but her son had passed away that summer. And it had been about a couple weeks before this experience. And I got in the car and I felt him in the car with me. And it surprised me. And I was like, I didn't quite know what to do with it. So the only thing I knew to do was to pull out my phone and make notes about what I was sensing and hearing and feeling. And eventually I was able to share that with his mom. The other thing that started happening is I was seeing 12s everywhere. And I was not a person who believed in signs from the other side. I didn't have any context for that at all. But all of a sudden, I was seeing 12s everywhere. And my birthday was the weekend of the accident. So it was my birthday on Saturday. It was the Mother's Day the next day, the accident the next day. So that all happened in the same time. But I started seeing 12s everywhere. And it was to the point where like, this is not by accident. This is too unusual. Like there's something going on here. So I started searching angel numbers 12. What does that mean? And but it opened my eyes. And later I learned it was my daughter who had been sending me the 12s trying to wake me up. Like, Mom, pay attention. We're trying to communicate with you. Because in my mind, the way that I thought things worked was I thought that I was just at the effect of the world, and then occasionally I would receive inspiration from God, from the Holy Spirit, and that I didn't have a lot of control over that. Even though, interestingly, I was writing in my journal every morning and I had started to write, what would you have me know today? That became a very consistent question in my journal. Sometimes I had very specific questions about what something I wanted to learn about, but a lot of times it was, what would you have me know today? As things progressed, I became very aware of the angelic realm. I became very aware of the angels that surround us. I started to learn that our interaction with angels was far different than what I had thought before. I had been conditioned to believe that angels were standing around paying attention to the things that we were doing wrong and like making notes of everything we were doing wrong. And they were basically reporting on us. They were tattletales. And I learned that angels were divine presences from source, here to lead and guide us. And I started to like this was a thought that had been on my mind for a long time, but it started to really develop this idea that to the angels, to our guides, to heaven, what source, whatever word you want to put there, we're like toddlers. And if you think of a loving parent, or if you've ever been around a toddler and you're just like enjoying their energy, and they're stumbling around and they're trying to touch the hot stove and they're trying to, they're trying to lean over something high. Like we are just lovingly redirecting them and going, aren't they so cute? And I started to see the angels that way, my guides that way. I started to see that they were just so excited for my successes and they were so willing to help me when I was getting ready to put my hand on a hot stove. They weren't judging me. They were lovingly guiding me and saying, "Hey, maybe you don't want to do that." And then I discovered and I mentioned the journaling because it surprised me so much when I began vocally channeling. I was like, where did that come from? And then as that came in, and if you're not familiar with vocal channeling, the way that it was the way that I experienced it, especially at first, was I would say things before it would even come into my consciousness. So I would be working with somebody and I would just say things and it wasn't even going through my conscious brain. And that's where it started. And then I started doing longer form channeling and you guys like this this is my nature. My consciousness would be in the back listening going, "Should you be saying that? Should you be saying that like that?" Like, so I'm a little bit of they work with me anyway. I've learned over time to be more trusting of that voice, and to really, it really is a frequency. We talk about frequency a lot, but it's really about frequency and where are we putting our attention. I think all of us have had experiences where we have felt energy. We've been in places where we feel uncomfortable, and we've been in places where we've felt uplifted. And connecting with the angelic realm is really dialing into that uplifted energy. It's making that intention that I connect with the higher realms. I connect with the higher frequencies. So one of the things that happened, which was super fun, is I started to work more with my angels and talk to them and get messages from them. Was we were on a we were on a trip in my husband and I into Mexico, and for the first time we were going on a whale watching trip. And we were going to go whale watching, and we went out to the dock, and it was the middle of the afternoon. For whatever reason, I was grumpy. I don't need a reason to be grumpy sometimes. I just was. I think I was tired. You're on a trip. Sometimes you get tired, and things weren't really going the way that I expected it to go. It was like they were walking us up and down the dock. I'm like, when are we going to get on the boat? And then we get on the boat. And it was this like kind of oversized raft. And I'm looking at these other whale watching boats, and I'm going, how did we end up on a raft? I'm like, I don't even know what's going on here. And then where I was seated, I was on the edge of the raft, kind of smashed on the edge. I was uncomfortable. So I was being really grumpy. So we get out into the water and we're leaving the shore, and the guy that was leading our tour, he's like, okay, so, let's watch for the whales, and we're going to go out to where they typically are. And we saw a whale come up out of the water and then go back down, like off in the distance. And we were about halfway through our trip, and that was the extent of our whale watching, was like off in the distance, seeing this whale come up and go back down. Impressive, right? But not what I was expecting. I wanted to see the whales. I wanted to like have that experience. And in my brain, I said, this is going to be a bust of a whale watching trip. Like I was just again replaying the grumpiness and just talking, just thinking about how like this is not going to be what I expected and so forth. And I heard, Julie, you have angels. And in that moment, my energy shifted. And I started rehearsing in my head, thank you, angels, for bringing the whales close to our boat. Thank you, angels, for bringing our boat close to the whales. And I rehearsed that in my head over and over again with this joy that I felt from feeling the angels near. And within 10 minutes, we were surrounded by whales. First on the left, there were two or three over here playing in the water, up and out and all over the place. And then they were on the right, and then they were to our front right. Like we were surrounded. And not only that, then a whole pod of dolphins came along and started swimming along our boat and jumping out of the water. I was in total bliss. Like, I don't know what it feels like to die and go to heaven, but I imagine it was a precursor to that feeling. It was total bliss being surrounded by these whales, being surrounded by these dolphins, knowing that the angels have brought these dolphins close to our boat, and our tour guide said, it's about time to go back to shore. Like, this is amazing. Like, he says, you guys have the best energy. This is amazing. And and when he said that, the whales started to drift away, and there was one whale that came up, and you've probably seen this before. They put their tail in the air and they start slapping the water. And it just felt like this beautiful goodbye, like hi and goodbye. And like 10 times that whale just slapped the water before he drifted off too. And the very next day I received the message, start teaching about angels. And when I came home from that trip, that's exactly what I did. I started teaching about angels. I also want to share with you an experience I had with my daughter on her birthday this past year. David and Carrie, both of them were born in September. And actually, when we went back and looked at pictures and we were gathering pictures um, for their service when they passed away, and we noticed that like all their pictures, so many of their pictures, they were together hugging each other. And even at the time of the accident, when I didn't know if they had survived or not, I remember just knowing in my heart that either both are still here or they're both gone. So it wasn't shocking to me that they both were gone, because I just had this knowing that one would not have gone without the other. And on Carrie's birthday this past September, I had the house to myself. It was a Saturday, and I was doing my journaling with her and talking to her. And she came in with just this beautiful, beautiful presence. It was an experience that I hadn't had quite like this before or since. And she took me on a journey, a mind journey, and she brought me back to when she was a child before she passed away. And she brought me back to memories that I had forgotten about. And she brought me back with so much honesty and understanding and grace and love, grace for the mom that I wanted to be, that I wasn't always. Um, it was just this beautiful, beautiful experience. And then later that day, I had decided I was going to go to a movie. I went to the movies by myself. And as I was headed to the theater, and it was, the sun was lower in the sky. And as I was headed to the theater, I looked off to my left, and there was this gigantic angel in the sky. The clouds had formed wings, and the sun was right there like the head of an angel. I'm going to show you a picture of that in just a second. But it was beautiful. And then I went into the theater, and I'm sitting in the theater waiting for this movie to start. And I realized I was in theater 12. This brings me so much joy just to remember that really special experience that I had with my daughter that day on her birthday. Thank you for, I'm seeing all of your hearts. Thank you so much. I've been seeing them. You've been bringing so much love to me. So thank you. I appreciate it. I really do appreciate it. Um, but the angels taught me to trust them and to trust my intuition. A little over a year ago, I was meeting with another, very spiritual in tune friend, and we were having almost like a visionary experience together. I don't know how else to express it, but it was like we were being brought into this experience of and what I saw in that experience, and it wasn't just me. It felt like this is where we're headed. And I'm telling you, the astrology, numerology, like everything is pointing towards this. And part of what we saw was we saw waves. We saw that as people who are aware, as people who are spiritually connected, as you are, we're riding the waves. We're riding the waves. Like this is what we're doing right now. Like we're having to surf the energy of this world right now. And there's a lot of energy in the world right now. There's a lot of shedding that needs to happen. There's a lot of like connection that needs to happen. But also what I saw was and it's so because at the time, like this this memory was coming back to me this week. I saw a corral, like fenced corral, and horse, like I was on a horse, and the horse jumped. We're in the year of the horse, the fire horse. The horse jumped the fence, representing like we're jumping the boundaries of where we've been. We're moving into a new dimension, a new understanding. We're bringing our spiritual awareness to this new place. So I saw like jumping the fence and that we're all wandering in a brand new wilderness. We're all wandering in a brand new it was like we're going through nature. It's like we're reconnecting with who we are. We're no longer corralled. We're jumping that fence. But the other thing I saw, and I don't know if you've seen this, but if you've seen like I don't remember what they're called, like the bumper cars at a fair where they have the electric line that connects to the top. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Okay, I see a couple people saying yes, they know what I'm talking about. But that's what I saw. What I saw was that we were moving independently, like we were joining um our own spiritual independence. We were acknowledging our own spiritual independence, but we were doing it connected to a higher source. So all this led to I've been sharing angel messages for the last couple of years. I've started doing mediumship. Um, I did a lot of study, a lot of practice, because that work is sacred. It's super sacred, and I take it very seriously. And so I think if you've ever been in a haunted house, have you ever been in a haunted house and you're just like, you keep trying to remind yourself, oh, this isn't real, like this is just all play acting. It's like here on the earth, we've been in the haunted house too long. And sometimes we start believing the haunted house. We start believing what we're seeing around us instead of the higher purpose. So as we open our heart and our mind, and recognize that the messages that we receive are subtle. Watch for patterns, numbers, music, nature. Record what you're experiencing and notice how you feel. I wanted to just share a couple of pictures with you before, and then I think we've got time for Q&A, right? Um, okay, so this is my handsome brother. I just wanted to introduce you to these beautiful, wonderful people in my life. This is my daughter, Carrie, and this is my son, David, who passed away. They're with their oldest sister, who was 21 at the time that this picture was taken. This is the angel cloud. Like I was driving and trying to snap a picture, and it looked way more impressive in person, but you can see the wings and the sun right there. Um, it was beautiful. I was like, I've never seen a message like that in the clouds before. You see that? It's beautiful. I want to share a couple of angel messages with you. This was a message I received actually in January 2024 with a long message about what was happening in the world. And they brought my attention back to this message. It was a very long channeled message that I received. Um, and as I reread it this week, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what's happening because they talked about all the things that are happening in the background that are going to come to light. But this was part of the message. Now is the time to align with the higher frequency so as to be prepared to rise above to see what is happening from the vantage point of truth and knowledge, which is available through your inner knowing, which is connected to the divine power that is. And this is just from recently. This is a recent message. All is well. You have only to calm your mind and slow your breathing to feel the divinity within you that whispers, all is well. You are eternally protected and whole. We are with you. We desire your ascension into greater understanding where you will find the peace you are seeking. And I want to leave those beautiful messages with you. And I would love to connect. So this is where you can find me. Um, and I would love to hear any questions that you have. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and attention.